I'm joined by Dr. Kent Comeau, a consulting psychiatrist at Cognito Health who provides his guidance for complex cases regarding anxiety, mood, and attention challenges. So today, I wanted to sit down and have a real conversation about what's going on and what people might be missing. Dr. Comeau, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to be here, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm stoked. This is such an important time to be having these conversations because it feels like on social media, especially younger adults, they're struggling, Dr. Como, not just like in Canada, but globally. From your perspective as a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
what are you making of this?
I had to look into this because it's good to ask the questions like, is it actually getting worse? Are things worse? I think we look on social media, and I think we're more we're hearing more about that there's more worse depression, anxiety amongst youth, young adults. So I did have to look that up, and it is true that there is certainly more people accessing care, more diagnoses, depression, anxiety. So yeah, what is that all about? I think there's a few factors that comes into play. I think a lot about what with the pandemic and COVID-19 and the effect that had on some really important developmental years. The anxiety, the staying at home, less exposure, less socialization occurring during that time. I don't think that that comes without consequence, that we would have a wave of depression and anxiety coming out of that. So I think that that's one of the factors. I do think that social media also has something to do with it. I mean, I think that what we are exposed to in terms of content, the way that the world is, it does shift the way that someone can think about themselves. And it's, a lot of comparisons can come up, and that becomes like, well, that this is where am I in my life, and in comparison. And I do think that that certainly contributes. Also, I just think that like screen time, and there has been studies on this, that increased screen time, being on tablets and phones, even at a young age, can really impact mental health and increase depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation associated with screen time, and especially the younger the age. So I think that it is one of those things that we really want to delay, when an individual, a youth, gets a device, as long as we possibly can. But it's just like so much ingrained and and normalized. Yeah, so I think that's a piece too. And then always, like, you got to think about the context too. I think there's probably some more academic, societal pressures as well, or economic pressures. I mean, it's kind of there is a more pressure just in general. The temperature is hotter, I think, in the world right now, and we're certainly, with social media, we're much more aware of it too. And that's the things that really we get fed a lot in social media. So I think that those factors, Daniel, I think those are probably, it's complex. It's not one thing, but I think that those things are factors. And then I think a lot too about like sleep as well, and the effects that I think that the access again to devices and the impact that that can have on sleep, which is so important in the developmental years. And added to that, now my brain is firing another thought as well. And I think the legalization of cannabis, and I think that that's also, I would say that probably more than we even know has had an impact as well. There can be a perception that just because it's legalized, that it's like okay, and that it's safe. Kind of like with alcohol, we know it's not great for you. It's very much a toxin and not good for you, even though it's legalized, at the age of 18. And we do know that cannabis affects there's so much like growth and development in the brain, right, of a young adult, and a kid, and like all the way up until the age of 25. There's like so much scaffolding and growth occurring, and we know that cannabis, especially high doses and high THC, it gets in the way of that. It affects that, and And I think that there's more youth that are using cannabis these days. So I think that that's another thing that's likely contributing as well.
I
Yeah.
am so glad. I mean, gosh, well, I love your honesty, first and foremost, Dr. Como. Ever since I've met you, and I love that you don't try to fluff things, which is
Yeah.
really important. You brought up cannabis, and I sort of want to go down this line. One
Yeah.
thing that I've noticed, not just on social media, but actually in my circle, like people that I know of, there's been like a movement away from alcohol and cigarettes and a
Yeah.
movement toward cannabis and e-cigarettes. What is it, Dr. Como, that makes cannabis particularly, I don't know if I should say bad, or maybe what is an underestimation that people are making when they think about cannabis use?
Um, yeah, there's a couple thoughts there. I mean, you talk about
Mhm,
like vaping and nicotine too. Like that's huge.
mhm,
I
mhm,
think I just want to mention that. I think now, I mean, you don't have as much of like the stink of like cigarettes, and it's just so easy, like just to be in your car and like
yeah,
vaping,
yeah,
and
yeah.
no one would even know. So the accessibility is like very much there, and it like less consequences of using it. Um, Easy to hide that, right? So, and highly addictive. So that's its own thing. But yeah, with cannabis, I guess yeah, I don't know. I guess there can be a perception that it's, you compare it, it's like, well, it's better than alcohol, there's
Mhm, 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 mhm,
less issues, like, look at alcohol and the effect that it has on people's lives. And
mhm,
yeah, it does. That's certainly true. um and there are more deaths associated with alcohol compared to cannabis. Absolutely. They're different though. They just have different things. Like they're not the same. And cannabis has negative consequences. Like I think about um, the increased risk of psychotic illness, right? Like if you're genetically predisposed to psychotic illness, like schizophrenia, we know that if you're using cannabis, you may turn that, like you may develop schizophrenia, and you'll have maybe a psychotic illness the rest of your life that can have huge impact on you. And that's especially before the age of 25, again, because there's just so much growth and development occurring that if it was up to me, like I would not let cannabis be legal until the age of 25, for that reason.
mhm,
um,
mhm, mhm,
so we can't treat them the same. Just because alcohol is legalized at 18 doesn't mean cannabis should have been too. Probably if we were making it make sense from a neurobiological standpoint, and like
mhm, mhm,
medicine and like the risks, probably after the age of 25 would have been you know more sound. Although even after that doesn't mean it's good for you. A lot of people use it for reasons like they want to reduce their anxiety, and it can do that in the short term, but it's not a good long-term option. It can make it worse, and it does actually. A lot of people use it for sleep too. um, yeah, it'll do that. Alcohol can do that too, but it's not a good quality sleep. And for some people, cannabis, we know, really impacts the deep REM, the deep sleep, the deep wave sleep, and that's where like restorative sleep occurs. And so yeah, you can sleep, but it may not be a restorative sleep. And that doesn't just have mental health consequences, it has physical health consequences as well. So we need to protect our sleep as much as possible and get away from this idea of just because I'm sleeping means it's, quality sleep. Doesn't mean that. And I don't think people realize that part of it. So
yeah.
yeah, there's those aspects. Obviously, if you're smoking cannabis like that, you know, don't quote me on that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but like, one joint that deeply inhaled could be equivalent to, several cigarettes, right? So it's not, one joint isn't the same as one cigarette. It's much more than that in terms of the irritation that it causes in the lungs. And yeah, I don't know if I would add much more to that, except it's oh yeah, and I guess like cognitively it's not really great in terms of being present and learning and it can certainly, chronic use can lead to amotivation as well, kind of like an amotivational syndrome. So yeah, we generally don't recommend substances as a, you know, a way of coping, you know, in moderation for some people, but like even then, like we just recommend you got to protect your brain. That's the best thing you can do. But yeah, we're just consultants and we just tell people, and they do it, they will, right, with their lives. And yeah, you just hope people make the best decisions and try to model that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And I think it's so important for people to hear you say that, because there's an instant thought for some people that if it's natural, therefore it's healthy or healthier. So I'm glad you brought those points up. When you're working with your patients, what's your philosophy when it comes to treatment? What is your mission? How does Dr. Comeau approach mental health?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll just like, you know, if I had to kind of sum it up in as succinct as I can, I would just say I do believe that people are inherently good, you know, at their deepest being, and I think the world gets to us in different ways, like even before we're born. You know, the stress that mom's under, and you know that even that will affect our genetics and how we develop before we're even born, right? And you know, early childhood experiences, and like we're part of systems, and we're part of the world, and our context shapes us, and in some great ways, in some ways it can get in the way. I think we just, you know, there's suffering in the world, that's a part of the human condition, right? And I think my job is to just help people understand how the human condition has impacted them, and maybe getting in the way and creating a fog of like who they really are, and like some of, you know, that light that's inside of everybody. And we just try to clear the fog so that people can come back to that, right, of what's inside of them. And you know, maybe give them a better understanding of what's getting in the way, why it got in the way. So you're not personalizing it, understanding your context, but ultimately just so you have like a path forward, right? And I think like as a psychiatrist, I love that we have different tools that we can use to help people get to that place of not just the absence of symptoms or the burden, right? For me, we don't want to get rid of symptoms. We want to understand them. It's a signal. It's something's out of balance, something's off kilter, and we use that to get us back on track, and you know, try to live a life that's aligned with our values. And that's kind of what that's the way I see it. You know, that's the way I work with my patients, and so we do have different tools to get there, and certainly, you know, the brain as well can get stuck, the way that it fires, you know, as a consequence of context or head injuries or substances and poor sleep. You know, it's complicated, and we try to make sense of that for our patients. And then, yeah, so sometimes we use medications appropriately. It can be a really great tool to get people out of the rut, where we use RTMS, right? At our clinic, we do that treatment, repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, like using magnetic pulses to like stimulate parts of the brain. And it works so well for treatment-resistant depression. So like, you know, what's that? Like clearly there can be a very much a biological basis, right, and how the brain is functioning. And you know, we reestablish balance, and then, but ultimately we figure out what got you there in the first place, and how do we get you on the right path lifestyle wise, you know, the way you're thinking, engage in cognitive behavioral therapy, you know, improve relationships if you need to, figure out and understand what your values are, connect with those things, get your sleep well, look at your diet. And honestly, generally people do very well, you know, with that type of approach, I find. So yeah.
I love it. You said this one line about like symptoms aren't just there to be fixed or get rid of. They're there to be understood, right? It's a signal. I think that's so important for people to hear. I remember when I was in university, when I had feelings of, let's say, fatigue, right? This was a problem that had to be solved, Dr. Como. I can't feel tired, right? I have to study. I have
Yeah,
to get over this, right?
yeah.
And there's such
Crush,
like a,
crush some more caffeine, right? Like,
absolutely, right?
right,
You know,
right.
and on this idea is so great. So knowing that we were going to have this discussion, I put out something on my social media. I said, hey, everybody, I'm going to sit down, talk to a psychiatrist. What are some questions that you have in regards to like procrastination, motivation? The majority of them they all relate to this sentence. I know what I need to do. I just can't get myself to do it. And people were using words like, Daniel, how do I beat procrastination? How do I battle it? How do I overcome it? So they were using words like there's this internal conflict and I have to like fight every day and maybe today I'll win. Even basic things like chores, like basic tasks. When whether it's your patients in your clinic or you see stuff on social media, what is happening psychologically where you have a want, like you have this desire, but you just can't get yourself to move in that direction?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. It's funny that came up because this comes up in some of my groups that I do too. Like I do these skills groups, and like when you ask people what are the things you want to talk about, like that was one of the
Yeah.
biggest first topic that we talked about the first couple weeks, right? Um, you're gonna hate me for saying this, but it's again, it's complicated. I can't
Mhm.
generalize what that is for everybody, right? It's really important that we the behavior is I'm not getting done what I know I want to do. That's the behavior that we know. It There can be various reasons why that is, and it just depends on the individual. I mean, for some person, they might be a perfectionist and the bar is set way too high. And they're like, well, psychologically, they're like, well, if I start doing that, it's going to take way too much energy and I'm at my capacity. So I'm just going to hold off and not do that. For another person, it's like, yeah, hey, I know what I need to do. Um, I just can't do it. There's some executive functioning issue, could have been a head injury, could be ADHD, or it's like, hey, like I want to do this thing, but it's kind of boring and there's not a lot of interest in getting distracted. Again, that could be an ADHD thing. Someone could be depressed and they just literally don't have the motivation, um, the energy inside of them to do that thing. For others, it's avoidance because they don't want to feel anxious. There could be performance anxiety, like a concern around, well, if I do this and it's not right or perfect, then I set myself up for failure. And or it could be substance use, right? We know that substance use, especially if it's you know quite consistent and your brain changes, like your dopamine centers change. There's nothing that can give you that much dopamine in the world, and what happens is you get like everything just seems like really dull, right? And nothing really gives you that dopamine, that hit, which is really important for motivation. I also think that I think there's something really important about like meaning and purpose, and
Hmm.
um, spirituality can be really helpful in having a sense of direction. And I would ask an individual that too. There's something about having like a scaffolding, like meaning, like what does your life mean? And the people who can answer that, they have a more clear path and like direction, and like they know where they're going or where they want to go in general in terms of the life they want to live. And I think that gives people dopamine too. Like it's not about getting to the goal. It's the pursuit of it also provides dopamine and motivation as well. So I think there's yeah, I would say that those are some bits that I would think about. I would think also around, what I with my patients, I think about values. Like we kind of have a general idea of like what we value, but like sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, I value that because it sounds good. Like, I value like
Mhm,
spending time
mhm,
with my
mhm.
kids and I value this, but then when you actually kind of look at someone's life and it's like, well, you value that, but where are you actually putting your time and energy? And is it out of alignment? And sometimes people just haven't sat down and thought about what they value. So we do like a values worksheet. And what's your top 10? Like there's a list of 50 things. Like what would be the top 10 that just kind of is you'd say, yeah, this is something I value. And then what would be the top 5 out of that? Right. And to me, that's gold. Like that's such gold. Those are the things like that only the individual, it just like, there's something about that that lifts their spirit, that it's I think of like a sailboat analogy of, if you know what your values are, then you can actually turn your sails so that you can catch the wind and the momentum that comes with that, and even like find the right current. If you know this is like a current, this is something that really gets my really gets me going and gives me energy. If you set your life up like that, you're gonna feel like a momentum, you're gonna have energy, you're gonna have some passion, which is really really important, super important, right? So it's like, and it's like, and I think that's the thing that I try to teach people, my patients, is like, what are the moments that do get you, or like listening to certain music, or maybe moments in a TV show. It's like, yeah, that seems like really meaningful to me, helping people, just being of service to others. Like if that's a thing that you love, that's gold. That's good to know. And how do we actually practically like build that into your life, right? That you can live a value-based life and just feel like you're working towards something. I think there's a lot to say about that. So anyway, yeah, that's like, I hope like someone listened to that, like they kind of go through the checklist and they might say, oh yeah, there's a few factors there. Um, but yeah, I think that it's individualized,
Mhm, mhm.
why, getting momentum. I think there's also, and I suspect with young adults too, like look at the world we're living in. I mean, and maybe social media can compound some of these things, but there's certainly a lot of like economically, I mean, like, the motivation to get a house, and like, to be able to afford that, and like job opportunities, and we have to understand like human psychology is like, we want to know that the effort that we put in, that there's like a kickback for that.
Mhm, mhm.
And I feel like for some, like some things are seemingly unattainable, and it's like it's going to affect people's spirit and drive to like, really push themselves. And it can be like the weight of that. I don't think that can go unnoticed as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
on
Yeah.
that train of thought, Dr. Como, how does one balance those ideas of, I have values, and maybe my values are maybe independence, freedom, and yet maybe you're a young person, you can't afford to move out, right? Or maybe there's certain things where you feel kind of powerless, and it make you feel hopeless. How do you like, do you need to reframe? Do you need to just accept this is the way that it is? How can you bring those values into your life without, doing something drastic?
That's a good question. Um, you always have to recognize that there is a context, and there's some things that you just cannot control, and there's some things that you can control. And I guess really getting clear of like, you say like something like independence, like what does that actually mean, right? Because for someone that could mean renting a apartment, and you could have a lot of financial independence, with that, rather than owning, because then there's maybe you're kind of at the mercies of paying your mortgage, and there's less freedom potentially,
Mhm, mhm.
with that. I know that, obviously there's other factors here, but what is it with independence, and yeah, I think that getting creative in, and first like really clarifying and hammering down like what is it, what does that look like, and what are the opportunities that are out there? Maybe we got to think outside the box, right? Because if someone's situation, like they could move, they could go elsewhere, they'd be quite happy, like, living in a particular place, then maybe like maybe that's a great opportunity. Like, well, here's, an opportunity for me to get my independence. Of course, I can go against maybe a value is family and being around family and relationships. So moving away kind of goes against that. And I think I would like talk to the individual and say, you know, yeah, values, you can't, like, they can be competing sometimes. You can have competing values. And I think it's just important to get clear on like what are your values, and then weigh the pros and cons and understand like, yeah, this is not ideal and like life's complicated, and but also to choose a direction of where the way that you want to go. There's no perfect solution out there sometimes, right? Most of the time. So how can we just hold how can we just hold that? How can we be with that? The strain, the struggle, it's a part of the human condition. It's part of the world we live in right now. And how do we be as effective as we can in that? Right. So, there can be often like a pull, like you want to have like the perfect, sometimes like as a therapist, you're just like, oh, like, we just need to like do this, this, and this. And like sometimes just like, yeah, this sucks. It's like, yeah, 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 this part of the world, or these realities right now. Yeah. Not like yes, but you know, I think we need to spend more time with the yes first, and be with that with people, because people are like holding a lot. And I think in social media, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, but if you do this, oh, but if you do that, and it can be like, it's like, oh man, like what's wrong with me? Can I think we need to like just be real, and spend more time with the and just sit with the tension. I think if we can increase our capacity to just sit with the difficulties, like I think the world would be a better place, and if we can do that together as well, and not alone in that. Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Como. It was so eye-opening when you first shared that idea with me, right? You said, Daniel, be careful, yes, butting, because yes, but has an agenda, right? It's like, here's the way that you should be thinking, right? Or here's the way that I want you to think. Where it's just like, gosh, like, just, we're so quick to, but think positively, right? But think of like, let's just sit there, right? Can
Yeah.
we, like, for a moment, can we just acknowledge and just validate, like, gosh, man, that's really brutal, and
Yeah.
then they feel hurt. And I'm sure you see this in your practice, where when people feel hurt, the defenses kind of go down. They don't feel like they have to prove themselves, or they have to convince you to their point of view. And I'm sure that it helps the therapeutic relationship.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I know I've done that. Like, a lot of people don't even know they're doing it. I think we're all just trying to regulate. We're all just trying to regulate. And, like, as a psychiatrist, we're no different, or a therapist. I mean, when your client is under distress or they have a problem, like, sometimes we have our tendencies, and we want to figure it out, and we want to reduce our own, and oh, but look at this, yes, but, and yeah, I don't know. I think there's like so much to get buy-in, and to like actually join people. We need to spend more time with the yes. And it has an effect. It actually does increase buy-in in the therapeutic alliance, in therapy. But even just like as a human being, with your friends, with your family members, like spend more time with that, and curiosity around that, because I think we can like, a but can be such a negating word, right? And we can drop people without even knowing it. So I don't think the intention's there, but the impact is there. Um, and yeah, so I think honestly, if I can I would say that's a big part of like in my practice. Like I want to help I want to help my patients and people in the world do that more so we can like have more of that in the world. I think it would be a better place to do that. And it starts with me also being that for my patients as well. Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, something that I really wanted to make sure that I asked you in our discussion today was, I know we talked about substances, but I think that like doom scrolling is a different beast. And I'll tell you why. I can sit and play video games for like an hour, hour and a half. And then like when I get bored or it doesn't start to feel fun anymore, I can turn it off. Same with a TV show, same with exercise. But there's something about scrolling on social media, and I don't know if you've noticed this too. It's so easy to get like to fall into like the whirlpool. And once it has its grips on you, an hour can go by, 2 to 3 hours can go by. Is there something different about social media consumption compared to just like watching TV or like, you don't ever lose yourself working out. I mean, that's not a great example because you get physically tired, but
Yeah.
how is it that time just flies when you're doom scrolling?
I don't have like the science. Like I haven't, I'm gonna, I don't have the science behind that. From what I understand though, like as a psychiatrist and psychology, there's probably a couple things. I think that it affects like your attention center. I think that short form content and quickly switching can affect your attention. And but primarily, I think what social media does is it's intermittent reinforcement. I mean, it's basically like the casino. It's gambling. It's in the way like yeah, casinos do this and they know how to do this really well. Like we know that someone could pull a lever twice, nothing, and then the third time you pull a lever and then you get a reward. And you could have that and someone could get a reward every third time. It's very predictable. People won't like that as much as if they got pull a lever 5 times, or 5 to 8 times, and then they got a reward and they didn't know when it was going to happen. That's actually more reinforcing. That's actually more interesting for the brain to have unpredictable, intermittent reinforcement when you don't know what's going to happen. It feels like chance, right? So that's the same thing with slot machines. It's not like they give you a reinforcement after every 10. People wouldn't really like that. That wouldn't be that fun. There's something about the like just coming across something and intermittent reinforce. And I think that social media does that. It's like, you're flipping through stuff, not really into, what a great video. I just like fell on this great video. What else is there, right? And then flipping through. And yeah, it's the same centers of the brain. I mean, when you talk about like addiction, whatever it is, like internet phone addiction it's the same part of the brain that's being activated, right? And so that's probably what it is. It's built for that. And also we know like the algorithms keep pumping out things that interest you and that get attention, right? Get your attention. It's built for that. And yeah, so I guess that's how I would respond to that. It's accessible, right? It's accessible. It's there. You have your phone with you all the time. So accessibility is obviously a big thing, and most people carry their phone around. And yeah, I would say that's
Great.
big. Yeah.
Really good. Awesome. Thank you for shedding some light on that. We've talked about, I think, a lot of really important topics that people are going to appreciate. I guess where I want to leave people off with is, if someone's listening to this, you're not going to like this question. If someone's listening to this and they're struggling and they feel stuck and they want to move in the right direction, where can they start? We talked about values, and gosh, there's journaling and meditation. And to prevent someone from feeling overwhelmed, is there a step one? Is there like a first thing that they can do to get started?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What would be the thing? Uh, I guess, one of the things that does pop up in my mind is I want you to think about one person that you trust, that you can go to. And you might not even trust them, right? Because like coming to someone with your mental health difficulties, there may be a hesitation, but someone you trust the most, right? So someone who I would just like find someone you can talk to about it, right? And that can be a professional, could be a friend, could be a family member, just like one person, right? Um, that would probably be the number one thing, because I want people to, I think just starting that process of not being alone in it. And I think there's huge value in that. Someone who cares for it, I think about this idea of, I was told this: joy shared is doubled, and a burden shared is halved. And that if
Wow.
you can just like share that, yeah. So like if you can just like share with somebody, sometimes that's enough to offload a little bit and just be with someone in the feeling and that isolation with mental health is brutal, right? So, and it increases suffering. So I think just like not being isolated in that would be the number one first thing that I would recommend. And that actually might then you might have like an ally and someone who can like help support you, and then maybe have like the courage to go and get professional help, right? And that I really would recommend that, um to get some professional help with someone who really understands mental health. And yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
I love it. I love it. Well, Dr. Como, thank you so much for your time today. This was a really, really awesome.
Yeah.
If okay, hopefully you had a good time.
Oh yeah, it was a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good, good,
Enjoyed
good.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Gosh, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to check you out and get to know what Dr. Como is all about, I mean, we have our shared organization, Cognito Health, which they can go to online, on Instagram, on all the platforms. Where can they find you specifically, Dr. Como?
Yeah, I probably need more of a social media presence, LinkedIn and all this stuff. But yeah, if people were interested, I'm also like, we have a clinic in Medicine Hat, Alberta. So it's Reconnect Mental Health. So www.reconnectmentalhealth.com. We actually have a lot of resources. We have a resource page where I kind of pick, I have a bunch of interesting resources for various topics, like a lot of stuff we talked about today. And also we're on Instagram. Reconnect.mentalhealth is another way to, just see some of the content, and just hear me talking about some other things too. Other
I
topics.
love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Como, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed.